Welcome. This is To Our Core with Katie Murray, and this is a place where we peel back our layers to uncover who we really are at our centre, at our core. And think of it as a chat with your bestie, the one who can make you laugh until your belly hurts, who is ridiculously unfiltered and will lovingly call you forward to help you cut through the noise and get real with yourself. Around here, nothing is off limits, and we are mixing this up with equal parts humour and heart, so let's dive right in. The little bonus episode from To Our Core with Katie Murray. There's been some stuff going on for me this week, and I really feel like the experiences that I've had, while you may not, have experienced exactly the same thing, I think the key themes are going to resonate with you. And that's why I'm getting on here to share. It's going to be very loose. I'm just riffing. There are no notes. I am just showing up here, not as a coach, not as any other title, except talking to you human to human with complete and utter vulnerability. And that is that this week alone, I have been called into multiple opportunities where I have chosen to stand up with advocacy, to stand up with courage in spite of the fear that was very potentially visible in my voice or in my body. And a key thing, I think, for me that has really become apparent is that often we don't talk enough. Like, we talk about courage being, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And also, we don't talk about the fact that often with that action, after the endorphin rush that has gone through us and we're like, yes, I did it. I stood up for my truth. I spoke. I used my voice, which is such a huge value and a concept you will see through the podcast episodes on my social media for Katie Murray Coaching, is that we have been given one damn voice. Let's use it. Otherwise, what is the point? However, the hangover that can come with great intensity, to doing the courageous action and allowing, your nervous system to later on kind of settle a little bit, how you can sometimes be left in this state of feeling, instead of calm, really uncomfortable. And that courage, by taking that action, can put you in a space where your brain thinks you're in danger. And when I talk about using my voice, I strongly believe that advocacy is such an important component of standing up for the values that you believe in. It's an integrity piece for me. However, when you stand up in integrity for what you believe in, you put yourself out there that you may not align with other people's values. You may have a difference of opinion. You may be disliked for your opinions. And you know what? Your brain does not think that's a great place to be. In fact, your brain can magnify the danger and really amplify it and leave you in this aftermath of, while you're proud about what you did or the voice that you used or the message that you conveyed, you can go into this rumination and this storytelling of, like, maybe you shouldn't have said that. Maybe you shouldn't have used that tone. Maybe you were too forthright. And advocacy in itself can come with a level of exhaustion, particularly when you're putting yourself in rooms where other people are remaining silent. In fact, the mere fact that they're remaining silent might also confirm for your brain that you speaking up in those spaces, not safe. Don't do it. Look at all the other people in the room that are managing to keep their mouths shut. Why do you have to put yourself on the limb? What if the limb breaks? And so in these multiple occasions that I've had alone this week, where I have really strongly conveyed a message of integrity for me in my values and speaking up for injustice. And as part of the injustice that I was witnessing came emotions of anger and frustration. And we are not well conditioned in our society to show those emotions of anger and frustration safely. In fact, we call them negative emotions. And we have, I don't know what your experience is, but my experience and my conditioning and what I see so much through the clients that I work with is that they suppress, they do not honor how they're feeling, because what would people think, particularly of women who are feeling angry and they're displaying that, who are feeling frustrated and they're displaying that. You know, the stories that came up for me alone was, they're going to think I'm so rude. Maybe because of what I've said and the way in which I've said it, because like I wasn't like monotone and I didn't like just keep my voice completely neutral, and there was some shaking, and you could absolutely see that the emotion of anger was right there underneath the surface. And while all of my messaging in regards to the words that I said was respectful and true to me, and honoring what I believed to be right and what I believed was important to speak up in that space, maybe they'll think I was too much. Maybe they'll think I'm an emotional woman that can't contain her emotions. Maybe they'll think that my demeanor in having that emotional response where my voice was shaking and you could tell that I was angry, even though the words that were coming out were perfectly fine, maybe they'll think I was being disrespectful. And you know, what I've been raised by society and also within my family is that you should show respect, particularly to people in authority. That's been a key theme for me. Like if they're in authority, then, you know, you need to watch what you say. And in spite of that conditioning, I have always been really true to the fact that I don't care what title you hold or what hierarchy you're in, or you could literally be the president of the United States of America, don't even get me started, and I don't care. I don't care about status. I don't care about how rich you are, how much materialistic things you have, how much power you yield. You are another human being that I'm sitting across the table from. And so that is a really key value in me. And also, I have been conditioned to also respect people in positions of authority. So there's an internal value for me. Like, this doesn't feel right. I'm not going to treat someone differently who's in power or an authoritative position or has lots of money or, you know, maybe has 100 staff underneath them. I'm not going to treat them any differently from someone who is disadvantaged by poverty, who has had significant challenges in their life, who may literally not have more than a couple dollars in their wallet or in their bank account. I'm not going to treat them any differently because I have fundamental beliefs and fundamental values around the fact that at the end of the day, the moment we get buried, we're all just human. We are all just navigating this experience of humanness. And I believe that that actually allows me to show up with greater respect across the board for all human beings. However, I also know that there are some people in authority who don't hold those same views. They believe that they should be spoken to differently. They believe that their time is more important than the audience's time to contribute to a conversation. And so I just want to come to you as another human being and say that while we're all human and while we can have a really clear idea around what our values are, there can also be a lot of conditioning that tells you that value's not right, that value's not okay. And you know what happens is, particularly when our conditioning and our programming is so unconscious, that our unconscious beliefs run the show. They create our thoughts that then impacts our emotions about how we feel about things. And then it totally impacts our behavior and how we show up. So one of the examples was when I spoke up and I was angry, and we've got a whole lot of conditioning, like I said, about, in society in general, we haven't taught people how to show anger and frustration safely. We haven't allowed people to know how to express themselves. We create definitions about negative emotions and positive emotions like happiness, joy, gratitude. And then we create negative labeling like don't show hurt, don't show guilt, don't show anger. And so we've got this mismatch where some emotions are welcome, not all of them though. And in my coaching, I work with my clients a lot about all emotions are welcome and we can express them As long as you're not aggressive or you're not posing a threat to someone else's safety, we should be able to hold people in what they're experiencing. And this week, I've experienced some anger. This week, I have experienced feelings of frustration. And because I have that value of integrity that I can use my voice to try and make a difference here, and that I would be complicit in situations if I didn't speak up when I saw injustice, then I create a situation where I put myself out on a limb, sometimes more than others. And so after one of these experiences where I'd spoken up, I was greeted on the whole with really significant support. People coming up to me, "I'm so glad that you said that. That's exactly what I'm thinking. You're so brave. I felt so inspired by what you said. Thank you for telling the truth." And you know what? That did feel kind of nice to be affirmed in that. And also, it did not last once one person in that room said to me, "I think you could have done that better. I think you could have held yourself in that moment better. And I don't think you did yourself any favours." And immediately I came crashing down because that felt really unsafe in my mind, in my brain, for someone to challenge that when I already felt like the courage hangover starting to happen for me. Should have put myself on a limb, and now I've been buoyed by these people supporting me and holding me in that space. And now one comment now has unraveled what's happening for me right now. Like, as in that I don't feel very safe anymore. And I don't feel like maybe I should have said what I said or the way I said it or whatever. And, in that moment, I responded with defensiveness. The person that spoke to me about my behaviour has, for one, made it very clear to me that they're not a fan of me. And it's because I have, on multiple occasions, put myself out on a limb when I've spoken about things that I truly believe in as my truth. And it's rubbed with their values. It's rubbed with how they would have done it. And so I'm not sure entirely whether or not there was a positive intent behind them saying that. That's me being completely honest. However, none of that should matter. As a coach, I have done a lot of work on myself, and yet I'm still human. And so for me, I was caught in this complex situation where I know better in terms of like all the resources available to me in the world to be able to regulate myself. And also my brain was doing what it's designed to do. Now, there were a couple of factors that created this experience of feeling unsafe to last longer than it should have. First of all, because of the environment I was in, I was drinking lots of tea. Now, anyone that knows me, I am quite caffeine sensitive, and it does not take me much to feel very jittery and a sensation in my body of dysregulation or anxiety, feeling anxiety. And so I know I drank way too much caffeine. That in itself was enough to dysregulate me, let alone the fact that I'd also spoken up courageously and then had the courageous hangover. That then created a perfect storm to allow my mind to continue to blow up the stories in my head about that person's comment, how people may have perceived me, even though I had like tenfold the people of that one negative comment that said all positive things. My brain is wired. It's called negativity bias. It was wired to hone in on the potential danger or threat for me. Then I proceeded that night to drink alcohol. I don't drink a lot. I had about 4 glasses of bubbles because I was at an event. And that was not a great recipe for me to have on the back of a day that had such high intensity of emotions for me. And so what it created for me was a now laser focus, because when I drink alcohol, it really impacts my sleep. Anyone else over 40 and suddenly alcohol is not your friend and it totally stuffs with your sleep? Well, that's me. And so then giving myself the extra alcohol on top of emotion-fueled day and then it impacting my sleep was like the perfect storm for allowing stories to cycle for much longer than they normally would have done, because our brains are wired for survival. I've said this a lot on the episodes into our core, that our brain is like our most protective big sibling. Like, it's just like, oh, be careful. Oh, don't want to do that. You might put yourself at risk. And it is doing it with the most desirable positive intent. Okay, our brains are not working against us. And when it comes to compliments, in comparison to a negative comment that feels like a threat, our mind is always going to prioritize a threat over everything else. It's going to outweigh a 10-ton of compliments. And so the science behind that is that the negativity bias, it evolved right back to our ancestors, and it helped them survive. You know, hear a rustle in the bush, might be a tiger, pay attention or die. Or hearing someone say, "You're doing great, lovely," does not keep you alive. In the mechanism of how your brain works on a scientific level, the compliment does not hit as hard, because you're doing lovely might make you feel better for a short amount of time. And also, if your brain is wired to perceive a comment that is perceived as negative, like I said before, I don't want to call emotions negative. However, as a society, we view them as negative. It's going to interpret that as a potential threat, and it needs to keep you alive. So today, one criticism equals potential social rejection. And our very archaic brain that has not modernized with time, really, it screams danger. 10 compliments, however, equals nice to have and not urgent, because your brain, it's not trying to hurt you, it's trying to keep you alive, it's trying to protect you. And when we think about praise, I want you to imagine that it can feel like a warm breeze. It's pleasant, but it's fleeting. Criticism, however, can hit our identity or our worth, especially if we care deeply about work that we're doing or about the people that we're associating with. We're tired, we're stressed. The comment triggers an old belief in us, which says, I'm not enough, don't fail. Or for me, it was about don't be intimidating. I've talked in episode 1 about how my strength was overdone, like the value of strength was overdone. And as a result, it made me receive a lot of feedback that I was cold or I was intimidating. And so for me, I've done so much work on trying to never be perceived like that. And what I obviously learnt in the end was the fact that I don't have any control over how people perceive me. And that just leads to people pleasing. And also, there is that little thing that says, don't be too forthright. Don't be so solidified in your desire to advocate and your passion to advocate that they view you as intimidating, because that might not allow you to be liked by others. And why does these kind of things stand out? Well, negative feedback, it activates the amygdala, which is your threat center in your brain. It boosts your cortisol, which is a stress hormone. It creates stronger, stickier memories. I talked about this in the episode that I talked about affirmations and why they don't work. The reason why memories stick is because of the strong emotional connection you had to the experience. So positive feedback, it needs to be repeated or savored to create the same imprint as a fleeting comment of, you could have done that better. So I want to talk about some ways in which you can retrain your brain firstly, and then I'm going to talk about some strategies that I actually implemented that did help me last night and this week. And that was to name the bias. So to actually say, oh, okay, I can clock what's happening here. That's a negativity bias, and my brain is doing its age-old trick of trying to keep me safe from the tiger that does not exist. Well, there's no tigers in my backyard anyway. 2, practice a thing called positive collecting. So keep a folder or notes of positive feedback. I actually have, as part of my desk, cards that people have written to me that have meant a lot to me, and they're not just compliments, they're evidenced. This is what I love about you. This is what I respect in you. This is what you inspire me to do. So just a discrete number. I don't have a whole desk full of cards. I do have some really meaningful representations of the impact that I have on other people as like a stockpile to do that positive collecting. So when a negative one pops up, you've got the option of reviewing 3 positives by utilizing the collection that you've got. The third one I want to talk to you about is the state of presence. So sitting with praise. Research, actually for the people that love the research, so want to know the data behind it, research shows it takes about 10 to 20 seconds of intentional focus to imprint a compliment. So slow it down and absorb it. And this is why we often, when we don't receive compliments, they go straight over the top of our heads. And when I say we don't receive them, we dismiss them very quickly. Someone might say, gee, that's a nice colour on you, Katie. And I'll go, oh my God, I love that jacket on you. So it's not that we've gone, no, it's not. It's not a complete rebuttal of their compliment. However, there's been no presence in that. There's just a deflection. Let me point something out that I love about you instead. And it is a rebuttal on a much more subtle and unconscious way, because potentially for some, the sitting with a compliment can feel really uncomfortable if it's not something that you've experienced a lot, or it's not something that you have got great resources about how to digest it. So it's one of those emotions that you're like, oh, don't know how to deal with that. Like push it away or suppress it. Don't want to think about it. However, if we actually want to change the way that our brain thinks about things, we need to slow it down. We need to absorb the compliments when they come. So saying thank you. I really, really appreciate you saying that. That means a lot to me. Thank you. And then having a pause and a presence in actually acknowledging what they've said to you. And I want you to think about another option, another resource in your toolkit is to separate yourself from the feedback. Now, in this particular example that I used, yes, I was absolutely feeling like it may have been a little bit personal because of the source in which it came from. And also, if we look generically across the board, particularly in regards to other events that had happened through this week, it was not personal. Not everything true is a threat, and not everything hurtful is true. If someone's giving me feedback, it does not necessarily need to mean that they don't like me. It does not necessarily mean that they think I'm a bad person. It does not necessarily mean anything except they're trying to give feedback. Which leads me into talking about how using curiosity, not judgment, can support you. So instead of saying, why did you say that? Instead, maybe reframe that as, what part of this, if any, is useful? And I've got to be true to you. I did not utilize that well yesterday. I did not seek curiosity, particularly from that feedback. Earlier in the week, I absolutely had sought curiosity. However, knowing the relationship that I had with that particular person, I did not necessarily want to continue the conversation. I did not want to step forward with curiosity because I did not believe that there was a positive intent for how they were delivering it. So I would just want to share with you, you don't need to stop feeling criticism. That is almost an impossible ask, to say that you're never ever going to feel criticized. However, I want you to think about the need to balance the weight you give it. So stepping back, I could reflect on all the people who had thanked me for contributing to that conversation, all the people that had said they were proud of me, all the people that had said I'd inspired them, or I could look at the one person who chose to use that as an opportunity to give me feedback, knowing that from previous experience with them, they didn't necessarily say that from a place of kindness. They didn't necessarily say that from a place of supporting me. And your brain will magnify the threat because it thinks it's saving you. And now you get to teach it that praise is just as important for survival in this. Things that I did do, however, that helped support me to regulate myself throughout this week was that I consistently move my body. You may have seen on my stories that I'm doing like a daily movement challenge where I've got to get outside for about 30 minutes a day and move my body. Doesn't matter the pace. It's not about breaking any records, but I move my body, and I stuck with that. Even when emotions felt really a lot, even when I felt a bit shaky, because there is no better time to move than then, because I'm actually moving the emotion. I'm not suppressing, I'm not keeping it stagnant, I'm moving it, which is what our bodies need us to do. I also have spent some time with a beautiful friend, and we actually went to an event together. And I mean, it was funny. There were aspects of it that were funny, which is always a great release and brings a little bit more balance to the nervous system. And it was actually her use of physical touch. She knew I'd had a rough day, and it was her use of physical touch that felt so nurturing. And it wasn't anything significant. It was just at various points in this event, I was intrigued by what they were saying, and I would lean forward and she would just rub my back. She knew I'd had a hard day. She would just rub my back so softly. And honestly, it was like my nerve endings were so switched on, and her light touch over my back, just rubbing it, was like a full-blown massage. Instant stress relief just coming out of my body just from her gentle touch. I then debriefed with my husband. Poor him. He was probably not expecting that when I rocked in at 10:30 at night. I wanted to let it all out. And I also reached out to another person for support who I absolutely trust. And I know that they'll be honest with me, and I know that they know me well enough to not just tell me what I might want to hear, to get their perspective on it, because I'm all about illuminating my blind spots. I'm all here for the feedback. And the other thing that I did was I named the thoughts and the emotions without making it become mine. So when I talk to people about what I've been experiencing this week, it was I'm feeling quite anxious, or I'm feeling quite dysregulated. I'm feeling a bit shaky. I didn't say I am anxious. I didn't take ownership over that. The thoughts that I was thinking, I wasn't owning them as mine. I wasn't saying, I don't think people like me. I was saying, I am having thoughts that perhaps there were people in the room that didn't appreciate what I had to offer in that moment. I wasn't thinking that people thought that I was a bad person. I was saying things like, to go back to that, I wasn't saying people think I'm a bad person or I am a bad person. I was saying things and reframing it in my mind, which created distance between myself and my thoughts. You may have heard the line, "You are not your thoughts. We are not our thoughts. We can let them pass through us." In that space, I was thinking to myself that I was having thoughts that people may have been thinking poorly of me. And that creates a level of distance, because I'm just having thoughts about that. I don't know it as fact. There are certain things that I believe, and also I'm open to being proven wrong. However, that's what I believed at the time. And also, I can choose what story I create about this experience now. I can choose whether or not I want to blow up the one comment, or earlier on in the week, the really intense, hard conversations that I was having, where I was stepping into advocacy with integrity, and that might have been challenging for the other people to hear. And also, I can have thoughts about that. I don't have to become it. I don't have to take it on. So yeah, I thought that was going to be about a 5-minute chat. And also, I really, really hope that this resonates with, I'm like opening myself right up here to tell you guys that one, there is a range of all emotions and none makes one better than the other. We've just been conditioned to believe that some are acceptable and others are not. We need to teach human beings how to safely articulate anger and frustration without demonizing them for it. We also need to understand that as human beings, we're going to have a range of emotions that happen for us every day. and that it's okay to feel them and it's okay to express them. And it doesn't make this a place that we need to stay stuck. Like, we don't have to be like, I was anxious yesterday. That must mean I need to continue being anxious about it today. We can just say that was an experience of feeling anxious. And I get to choose now to step in and say, enough now. That story's run its course. I have spent some time sitting in reflection about what the overwhelming responses have been to me this week when I've used my voice. And on the whole, it's been positive. People would see this all the time on social media with trolling. They could get like a flurry of incoming positive messages like, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being present. Thank you for being authentic. What comes with authenticity is that you leave yourself completely exposed because this is who you are. You stand up as you are. And so I see a lot of people talking on social media about the fact that they have got a block around being visible because they are concerned about what that might invite in. And there's the negativity bias that I might expose myself to criticism, ridicule, trolling. And they could have got 150 messages that were positive, and one trolling comment is enough to eradicate all of them. So just balancing the scales and being aware that there are certain things that we can do that can be supportive for us and certain things we can do that may be very unsupportive. Like, definitely yesterday and this week, there have been times where I haven't enacted the strategies that I would offer to my clients. There's absolutely moments like, this week where I had some alcohol and I knew that that was going to impact my sleep. And therefore, I would know that a lack of sleep probably wouldn't make me feel amazing. And also, I'm human. I'm not going to always employ every strategy perfectly. I'm not going to always deploy my resource toolkit because I'm human. And sometimes I'm going to be more like in a position of reflection where I go, I can see that maybe choosing those certain coping strategies or doing those certain behaviors may have been counterproductive to actually making me feel better about this situation. And so this is not about perfectionism. If any of this is resonating with you, if you're like, shit, I feel very seen and I can very much relate to like being in a place of feeling unsafe and then really lasering in on like any negativity that might come your way because you put yourself out there in whatever context it might be, then I want to say to you, go to the link in my bio. Join the waitlist for the self-sabotage behavior. When I talk about perfectionism, when I talk about people-pleasing, and I talk about performing, and I talk about procrastination, they are all just labels of the same behavior. It's self-sabotage. And some of what I've shared today, I absolutely self-sabotaged. And we're humans. And also, I don't let it become a pattern. I snap myself out of it real quick. And so what people come to me with as a coach when they're struggling is when there are patterns, when this is showing up time and time again, when they're like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I say consciously that I don't want to do this, and yet I still keep doing it. Guess what? You actually have the ability to interrupt those. However, you have to know what's going on below the surface for your mind. You have to know what is going on and educate yourself in order to adopt alternative strategies. The omission or the stopping of just doing something does not work in your brain. Just a succession plan of like, I'm just going to stop doing this. For any person that has ever said, I'm not going to eat chocolate after dinner anymore, whatever it might be, whatever behavior you want to stop, and then you find yourself going to the cupboard, or in my case, chocolate lives in the fridge. It absolutely, I understand that may not be your truth. And also for me, it's my truth and I'm not having chocolate any other way. Unless it's a Lindt ball, because then a Lindt ball, it's good at room temperature because then it just melts into your mouth. Anyway, we're back to self-sabotaging behaviors. If you are wanting to stop a certain behavior, it is highly unlikely that if that behavior has formed a significant pattern, if it has become a habit loop, you will need to replace the behavior with a reward that matches it. Because a lot of people will come to me and say, my behaviors, Like when they're talking about and they're going, I'm like just doing them over and over again. I don't want to do them anymore. I'm like, what's the reward that you get from them? And they're like, none. I'm like, absolutely, that is not the case. And they're like, what? I'm like, well, the way our brain works is that we repeat things because there is a reward there. We have continued to practice that same behavior because there is a reward. We're not always consciously aware of it, but sometimes it can just be the familiarity of the same outcome that is the reward. Because, our brain loves familiarity. Our brain loves the same. Our brain loves patterns. So if you're starting to form a pattern and you're like, there is no reward here, there will be a reward. There will absolutely be a reward on an unconscious level. So if we can match what that's doing for you. So for example, someone that was wanting to give up chocolates or like eating a lot after dinner at night and they were like, this is not serving me. I don't want to do this anymore. I would be saying to them, great, what's the reward? What does that eating the sweet foods, the Nutella on toast, the Magnum ice creams, the Maxipon ice creams. For those that have been following me on social media for a while, that was a flavor for a while. And also, wasn't a problem for me. And there are certain behaviors sometimes that we do that, people are saying, I want to stop this. So if you want to stop a certain behavior, I would be saying to you, what is the reward that you're seeking by doing that? Chocolate eating, for example, and they might say, oh, it just feels like at the end of the day, after a busy day at work, then that's just the signal to my brain that this is me time. While we're on that, maybe you resonate more deeply instead of the chocolate eating at night. It's more about watching a new Netflix series into the wee hours of the morning when you know that makes you feel exhausted and sleep deprived. Maybe it's the endless scrolling on your phone when you say, I want an early night. And then what do you know? It's like 12 a.m. and you're like, shit, I just got lost in a doom scroll for the last 3 hours and I don't want to do this anymore. The reward might be that you just want to dissociate and step away from all of the responsibilities you might have created for yourself that day. And so I would be asking to you, if you wanted to do change behavior, is what's another activity that can offer you a similar or same reward? Maybe if it's about you acknowledging that this is your reward, that chocolate is your treat at the end of the day, as I like, well done, you did a good job today. What is another behavior that you would be quite happy to have as part of your nightly routine? It might be that you go and run yourself a bath every night. It might be that you want to give your friend a call and have a moment of connection to feel good. It might be that you go and put on a face mask or do your skincare or whatever it might be. It needs, in order to change the habit loop, it needs to be a similar reward to the behavior you're trying to replace. This is the work that we are going to do in the 6-week coaching container in the self-sabotage solution. The waitlist is open. Grab your spot. This is going to be a limited spaces available kind of program, okay? I can help you with this. I can support you with real, tangible strategies so that you can start creating behavior and habit loops in your life that allows you to step into alignment rather than escapism from your life. You can start showing up as yourself with integrity instead of performing and trying to match the audience and see, is this something that's going to be well received? Maybe I should just curate myself down. Maybe it's the procrastination that's getting in your way, where you keep saying, I just want to get this done, and yet I can't seem to get myself motivated in order to do it. I can unpack the beliefs that are trying to keep you safe in that and the reward that is unconsciously embedded in that. I can help you with this space. I want to help you. And also, I don't want you to believe that you're never going to feel the wide range of emotions. You're never going to see behaviors pop up for you. We are human beings. We are not perfect, as much as sometimes in our lives we strive to be. There is no joy truly in perfection. It's an impossibly high standard. You reach it and then it disappears, and you've got to be better. 1% better every day. That's fine. 100% every single day can look really different from perfection. And so with that, I'm going to love and leave you. And once again, I've managed to turn a really quite a short story into a long one. and I really hope it's brought you an incredible amount of value. Thanks for spending time with me today on To Our Core. If something landed in your heart or gave you a much needed giggle, consider sharing it with a friend who also may need this as a timely reminder. And go on. You know you want to. Give me a 5-star review so that this podcast can land in the ears of many, many more people. Because remember that life is too short to stay on the surface. Keep living, loving and laughing all the way to your core. Go make life great. And if you want support around this, go to the show notes to find out more. Until next time, I'll meet you back here with more truth, laughter and a whole lot of heart.